Imagine World War II. The world is at war. Nations are clashing with the most advanced military technology of the time. Tanks are rolling across fields. Planes are dogfighting in the skies, and soldiers are armed with machine guns and rifles. Now, picture one man in the middle of all this chaos, charging into battle with a longbow, a Scottish broadsword, and a set of bagpipes. Sounds like something out of a movie, right? Well, this man was real, and his name was Lieutenant Colonel John Malcolm Thorpe Fleming Churchill, but everyone knew him as Mad Jack. And trust me, he earned that nickname. Today, we're diving into the absolutely insane, almost unbelievable story of Mad Jack Churchill, the soldier who thought modern warfare was a bit underdressed. His personal motto: any officer who goes into action without his sword is improperly dressed, and he lived by it. While his comrades were learning to field strip a rifle, Jack was probably practicing his archery and sword fighting stances. This wasn't some historical reenactor who got lost. This was a British Army officer who brought medieval weapons to a 20th century gunfight, and somehow not only survived but became a legend. So, where did this larger-than-life character come from? Born in 1906, Jack was a man of many talents and eccentricities long before the war. He was an adventurer at heart. He once rode a motorcycle across India and Burma. He represented Great Britain in the World Archery Championships in 1939. Oh, and he was a professional bagpiper who won second place in a piping competition in Scotland. He even had a small role in the movie The Thief of Baghdad because of his archery and bagpiping skills. You can see a pattern emerging here: archery, swords, bagpipes. These weren't just hobbies. They were his toolkit for life, and soon for war. When Germany invaded Poland in 1939, Jack was ready. He was serving with the Manchester Regiment in France. As the British Expeditionary Force retreated towards Dunkirk in 1940, Jack's unit was tasked with holding the line. This is where the legend of Mad Jack truly begins. During an ambush on a German patrol, while his men opened fire with their rifles, Jack gave the signal to attack in the most Jack Churchill way possible, by standing up, drawing his longbow, and firing an arrow. He shot a German Feldwebel or staff sergeant, making him the only known British soldier to have felled an enemy with a longbow during the entire war. Talk about making a statement. His arrow was a barbed one, a bodkin point, designed for piercing armor. It was a clear message. Mad Jack was here, and he wasn't playing by the conventional rules. But the longbow was just his opening act. His trusty sidekick was a basket-hilted Scottish broadsword. He carried it everywhere. During the chaotic evacuation from Dunkirk, witnesses described seeing Jack, calm as you like, walking down the beach with his sword swinging by his side, looking for his misplaced bagpipes. Even in the face of overwhelming odds and a desperate retreat, his priorities were clear. After Dunkirk, Jack's adventures were far from over. He volunteered for the Commandos, the newly formed elite British fighting force. This was a perfect fit for a man of his unique skills and fearless attitude. In 1941, he was part of Operation Archery, a raid on a German garrison in VGSY, Norway. As the landing craft ran plowed, who was the first man to charge ashore? You guessed it, Jack Churchill, playing March of the Cameron men on his bagpipes before throwing a grenade and charging into the fray, sword in hand. Imagine being a German soldier, waking up to the sound of bagpipes getting closer and closer, then seeing this wild-eyed man with a giant sword charging at you. You'd probably surrender on the spot. His most legendary feat of audacity, however, came in 1943 during the invasion of Italy. He was tasked with capturing a German observation post near Salerno. This post, designated Pigoletti, was heavily fortified with machine guns. Under the cover of darkness, Jack and a corporal named Roffel crept towards the enemy position. Using his sword as his primary tool of persuasion, Jack single-handedly captured the entire garrison. He would leap into a trench, sword flashing. yelling Hand hoch, which means hands up. In German, the terrified soldiers, completely caught off guard by this medieval nightmare, would immediately surrender. One by one, he and Corporal Ruffle moved from post to post, using the captured Germans as human shields and forcing them to call out to their comrades to give up. By the end of the night, Jack Churchill, with just his sword and one other man, had captured 42 German soldiers and a mortar crew. He literally herded them back to the British lines like a flock of sheep. When he got back, he simply handed over his prisoners and his sword, which he'd been using to prod them along. But Jack's luck wasn't infinite. In 1944, during a mission in Yugoslavia to support Tito's partisans, he found himself in a desperate situation. He and his Commando unit were tasked with taking a German-held hill, Point 622. They were heavily outnumbered and outgunned. One by one, his men fell until only Jack was left, fighting on. He was knocked unconscious by a grenade blast. When he woke up, he found himself a prisoner of the Germans. They initially thought he might be related to Winston Churchill, which probably saved his life. He was flown to Berlin for interrogation and then sent to the Sachsenhausen concentration camp. Now, for any normal person, being in a Nazi concentration camp would be the end of the story. But this is Mad Jack. He wasn't about to sit around and wait. He and a Royal Air Force officer managed to crawl under the wire and through an abandoned drain to escape. They tried to walk all the way to the Baltic coast, a journey of hundreds of miles. Unfortunately, they were recaptured just a few miles from the sea. But that didn't stop him. He was moved to another camp in Austria. And what did he do? He escaped again. This time, he simply walked out when a lighting system failed. He then walked for 8 days and 150 miles, surviving on vegetables he stole from gardens, until he ran into an American armored column in Italy. He was finally free. You'd think after all that, he'd be ready for a quiet life. But the war in Europe was ending, and Jack was genuinely disappointed. When he heard the news about the atomic bombs being dropped on Japan, effectively ending the war, his reaction was priceless. He reportedly said, "If it wasn't for those damn Yanks, we could have kept the war going another 10 years. He loved the thrill of combat, the adventure of it all. For him, war was the ultimate sport. Even after the war, his thirst for adventure didn't wane. The battlefield just changed. He was sent to Palestine, where he once helped protect a medical convoy that came under attack, earning him decorations for his bravery. After his time there, he became a land-sea warfare instructor in Australia, where he became a passionate surfer. Yes, Mad Jack Churchill, the sword-wielding, bagpipe-playing commando, took up surfing. He would be seen on the waves of the Australian coast, a true fish out of water who somehow fit in everywhere. He finally retired from the army in 1959 with 2 distinguished service orders to his name. He settled back in England, but his eccentricities never faded. He was known for alarming train conductors by throwing his briefcase out of the window every day on his commute home. What they didn't know was that he was throwing it into his own backyard, so he wouldn't have to carry it from the station. That was Jack Churchill, always finding the most unconventional, yet strangely logical, solution to any problem. He passed away in 1996 at the age of 89. His life reads like a work of fiction, a comic book hero brought to life. He was a man out of time, a warrior from a bygone era, who found himself in the midst of the most brutal conflict in human history, and didn't just survive, he thrived. He charged into battle with a sword, a bow, and the sound of the pipes, not because he was insane, but because for him, it was the proper way for a gentleman to go to war. The story of Mad Jack Churchill is a reminder that sometimes the most incredible tales are the true ones, and that history is filled with characters far wilder than fiction could ever imagine. Thanks for joining me on this wild ride through the life of one of history's most fascinating soldiers. If you enjoyed this story, make sure to hit that like button. Subscribe for more tales of incredible people. And let me know in the comments what other historical figures you'd like to hear about. See you next time.